That's right. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Bridging the Gap here on the Jersey First TV network. As always, you can hit that little notification bell and subscribe, where you can get all of your Jersey First content, your Nader narrative, your Real Talk with Fernando, and Bridging the Gap. You can check us out on jerseyfirst.org, where you could sign up for our newsletter and sign the Jersey First pledge. And you can check us out on demand anytime on OnNJ.com. This is another episode of Bridging the Gap here. As always, I'm AJ Malillo.
And I'm Stephen Rabolo.
And we're glad to be back. We hope you had a very Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. And now we're coming up on the new year. So hopefully you'll have a Happy New Year. And 2024 will be a wonderful, wonderful year for all of our listeners and ourselves. And Stephen, how was your Christmas? How was your couple of days, weeks off here before you head into the New Year's?
So listen, it's been awesome. Christmas was great. I got to, just a very nice, low key, immediate family. We had a delicious prime rib. If there's one thing my father knows how to do, it is cook a prime rib. So that's like holiday tradition. Any holiday when the family's all together, Bill throws down on the prime rib, and it was delicious as could be. I'm actually still eating the leftovers. I think I have enough leftovers to make it through the end of this week, actually, which is awesome. But it was great. Happy to be home. Happy to see so many family members. Like, I call my neighbors my family. Like, you've been here, you know how this is. So all these people that are coming down, I haven't seen since the summer. And what a time to reconnect, catch up. It's been an exciting few months, not only for me, but for everybody. And I feel like everybody's been up to some pretty cool things. And it's cool to just kind of be with all these people, the people that watch me grow up, watch me, evolve into the person that I am today, and know my plans, know my dreams, and kind of have this week now where we sit back and it's like, all right, well, you did this, you did that, and New Year's right around the corner. Like, what do you have in store? And sharing those aspirations and dreams and goals with all of these same people has been awesome. I think it's probably been the best part about being home and not being in school. So couldn't have been a better week, truthfully.
That's fair. That's awesome. That's true. And it's good to reconnect with everybody, and see the people that you haven't seen in a while. And the holidays are the perfect time to do that. So hopefully the listeners got to do that with their families and loved ones and friends. And I'm glad that you got that experience. Personally, we had a Christmas up in Jersey. We rented a little Airbnb. My parents came up from North Carolina, where they're at now. And I saw my brother and his fiance, and then my other brother and his girlfriend and daughters. We all got together. It was very nice. We had, we did our traditional 12 Days of Christmas sing-along, which if you're familiar with the Malillo family, which is always a good time. We, just spent the time together, and that's all you can ask for. Unfortunately, though, if you couldn't tell by the way that I look on the screen, I think I did get a little sick. I came down with something over the break, and I know that's been happening. I know cases of a bunch of different sicknesses always spike this time of year with families getting together, and I did catch a little something, but we're powering through, Steve. We're powering through. So what can you do?
Listen, you not only did you catch a sickness, but you also caught a loving, great time with your family. And I
That's right.
think when you balance it out on the scale, it one's worth the other.
I'll take it every time. That's a good point. But look, we got a couple of stories to hit today, and then we're going to talk a little bit about New Year's and approaching 2024, and maybe a New Year's resolution for Steve and I, stuff like that. But Steve, you want to start us off with some stories?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that'll be interesting for us to talk about, and I say interesting for us, and if you've been listening to the podcast for at least the past few weeks, you're actually familiar with what we're going to talk about. This is something, and I don't think we actually called it by its actual name when we were talking about it, but a few weeks ago we had some, we'll call them young leaders, join us for a brilliant little interview, young high school Republicans. Part of the organization, and they were talking to us about some of the initiatives that they're working on in the New Jersey State Senate. And one of the things that they mentioned that we talked at length about was a bill that they had sort of, worked on with some of these legislators. The New Jersey high school Republicans endorsed this bill, and it was to give registered 17-year-old voters the right to vote in primaries so long as they are going to be 18 by the time that the general election comes around. And so this is called the Zwicker bill. Zwickeer, because I don't know how that's going to come across on a microphone, Zwicker. But this is sponsored by State Senator Andrew Zwicker of South Brunswick, New Jersey 16th District, and Senator James Beach of New Jersey 17th District. And so this is just it's just passed the Senate, and it's actually headed to the governor's desk right now, awaiting his signature if he's going to sign it. And if signed, like we were saying before, it allows 17-year-olds in the state of New Jersey who are going to be 18 at the time of the general election to vote in the primary. So some background information that you might need on all of this when it comes down to registering for these kinds of things. New Jersey is a state where we have closed primaries, meaning you have to be registered with a particular party in order to vote in that party's, primary for the general election. So let's say you're 17, you're a young Republican, and you're going to be 18 in October, but the New Jersey primaries happen in June. So you wouldn't be able to vote for, who you want the Republicans to nominate for the general election, but come the general election, you'd be able to vote for whoever is nominated. A lot of young Americans for a long time have sort of identified this problem. And there's actually been 18 states plus the District of Columbia that have actually passed very similar bills that afford these same rights and privileges to people who are 17 at the time of a primary, but 18 by the time the general election rolls around. I think this is a great thing. If you listen to these senators, they talk about empowering a new generation of voters, allowing, these people who are going to be, involved in this general election, more of an equal voice and an equal opportunity to put forth candidates that support their values. And you're talking also about a younger generation. Voter turnout for young people is notoriously not the best, and they see this as a way potentially to maybe increase more voter turnout in the upcoming elections. The only caveat here, this is kind of a bummer for anybody who is, potentially listening to this, you're 17 right now, and, you'll be 18 by the time this comes around, and you think this might work. If signed by the governor, this actually doesn't go into effect until 2026. So you'll miss, the 2024 general election, and then there's some Senate and primary elections that go on in 2025 that you would also miss. But starting 2026, so the next general election in the next 4 years, is when all of these options to vote in the state primaries would become available to New Jersey citizens who are registered to vote, age 17, about to be 18 by the time the general election rolls around. So I think it's a pretty progressive bill. I think it's pretty awesome. I'm happy that it's made it through the Senate. I don't think it had an easy path by any means. There's been a lot of negotiation on it. And I'm curious to see, I don't see a reason why Murphy wouldn't sign this. I think it's a pretty great bill. And I think it's something that, like, if you sit down and you invest the 5 to 10 minutes and you read about it, or you listen to two intelligent guys talk about it, we give you a really good unbiased, rundown of the facts and what this does for people. Unequivocally, I think it's a pretty easy bill to support and something that everybody in New Jersey should be happy about.
Yeah, I think here's the thing. Some people say that the voting age is too young to begin with, and that's like critique of the bill to begin with to start. But I would say this: if you believe that 18 is even too young to allow voting, I don't think that should really change your perspective on this bill. If you are 18 by election day, you should have every right to decide who you are going to vote for in that general election, which is what the primary is for. We want people to, we keep having these arguments every year. The elections come up. It's like, oh, why do I have to pick between these two people? Oh, I have to pick between the better of two evils, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, yeah, you don't have to pick between the better of two evils. That's the whole point of the primary process. And one of the things in the primary process is you picking who you want to represent your party in the general election. And a 17-year-old who's going to vote in that general election should have a right to say, okay, well, I get to vote for the general, but I don't get to vote for who will be in the general. That seems a little bit ridiculous on its face, right? So you're not really changing anything. You're not really changing any voting ages. You're just saying, okay, well, you're going to be old enough to vote anyway, so you might as well have a full say in this process. We should allow people to have the entirety of their say and their voice to be heard throughout the entirety of the process. I would also like to point this out. The 2023 elections in New Jersey, only about 1 in 6 voters voted. 1 in 6 registered voters in the state of New Jersey voted, right? And what are the reasons for that? Okay, you could say 2023 is an off-year election, so there's not a lot of hype around it. And sure, but voter turnout in New Jersey hasn't been great across the board for the past few election cycles. And it's like, maybe if you give people more of an opportunity to have a say in what the general election is going to be, you'll get more people to vote in these general elections. And if you get young people involved earlier, they will be more informed voters as they get older and become more entrenched in these election cycles and the politics and real life and so on and so forth. So I don't know. I think it's a hard bill to not support. I think if you look at who voted for what, most it was mostly a party line vote. They said, but some Republicans voted against the bill and some abstained from voting in the bill. And it's like I just don't really see a good solid argument as to why not to support the bill. I'm pretty sure, and Stephen, I'm not sure if you said this. What is it? 30 other states have a similar bill. Is that right? Did I read that correctly?
18 plus the
18. I'm
District
sorry.
of Columbia.
18 plus district. Maybe I was reading a different article that said 30. My bad. But 18 plus the District of Columbia that had it. And so here's the thing. I just don't see a strong argument against this bill. The strongest argument is that you're changing the voting age to a younger age, and most people think it should be older, but even that it seems weak because you're not really changing the voting age at all. You're just allowing somebody the entirety of the process to have their voice be heard.
Correct. And I think that this could be a fun little callback to some of the things we spoke about last week. We talked at length about, Donald Trump and his, issues in Colorado, very specifically, where they're prohibiting him from appearing on the primary ballot. And that case is affirmative of the fact and the point that I intend to make here, which is primary elections generally fall under the jurisdiction of the state. So as long as this is something that the state supports, and I say all of this because I think a lot of what you're saying, a lot of opposition to this might just be people who, read a quick headline and say they're trying to change the voting age, blah, 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 blah. And that's not really what it is. The federal voting age is 18. In order to vote in a federal election, you have to be 18. However, what we're talking about are state primary elections, and the Secretary of State, all of the election boards and committees are the ones that are ultimately in charge of making these decisions. And so I think it's just a great move on those other 18 states plus District of Columbia, and hopefully Governor Murphy, sees the value, because I think this is something that benefits everybody, whether you're a Democrat or Republican. We want more people going to the polls. We want a more educated voting populace. We want younger people to be involved in the issues. And I think we have a track record in this country, especially over the past few years, of young people showing that they want to be involved and sort of, craving, almost like pining for, a bigger participation role in politics, because they realize how much of their life it really does affect. And I think, that's partially attributed to social media, what we see on the news and all those other things. But getting more people to the polls, to me, is something that we should always advocate for, so long as it is like legal, sound, and justifiably correct. So I think this is a great bill. I hope Murphy signs it. And the only thing I see being a real bummer is that it doesn't take effect until 2026. So, even some of these kids that like we spoke to, that were kind of like pushing for this because they might have the chance to vote in this election, they're not going to get it. But sometimes that's the price that you pay for progress. So
yeah, that's fair. And the 30 number was I just remembered was the states that there's some sort of challenge for Trump being on the primary. It's 30 states at this point. And that was a story out of the New York Times where they talked about how the Michigan Supreme Court, unlike the Colorado Supreme Court, struck down the attempt to keep Trump off the ballot. And if you listened to our episode last week, rightfully so. And we'll see as more of those types of stories come down the pike. And eventually the Supreme Court's going to have to rule on this. So hopefully they do so sooner rather than later. But Steve, what's up?
I'll give you an interesting thing about that. So I was reading actually that same article you talked about, and primary ballots for the military have to be shipped out by January 13th, and then absentee ballots by January 18th. So the Supreme Court really is kind of on a time crunch, because if they don't have it settled, a lot of these states, and we mentioned this about Colorado specifically, even though the Supreme Court the Colorado Supreme Court, prohibits him from running, I believe it was like January, I want to say 4th or 5th, maybe.
Through the 4th.
Yeah, there's a stay through the 4th. So regardless of that fact, it doesn't actually take effect until that date. So, At least in Colorado, the time is really crunching, but for a lot of these other states, there's a little bit more time for this issue to get resolved. So something worth keeping an eye on. And it seems like all of our stories today are just election centric. But I guess that makes sense. We are entering a pretty contentious election year, and what we were going to talk about next is actually comes out of the hometown right here in New Jersey, Tom's River. And I thought this was an interesting story. And AJ, we were discussing this before. You brought up a very like what seems to be the obvious answer to this problem that is plaguing the county right now. And I'm curious to have a discussion about it. But this all went down at the Toms River Regional Board of Education's, school board meeting a few days ago, and they urged the Ocean County Board of Elections to remove polling places from schools. This way, there was no need for virtual days. So the way that it goes right now, and again, when we look at the big picture, we're talking about 3 days this past school year that the school had to be closed in order to allow for polling to occur in these schools. What's interesting about all of this, though, is Toms River, which has 18 schools in the district, 11 of those schools are used as polling places on election days. You compare that with, the neighboring Brick Township, which is quite literally the next town over. There's 57 voting districts. Not a single one of them is in a school. You have Jackson Township, which is also pretty close to us, 34 voting districts. None of them are in schools. So, proponents of trying to remove polling places from schools are arguing it's unnecessary days where our students are home and engaging in virtual learning, which we know is less effective. And on top of that, there's probably better, more central places in the community where we don't have to disturb the education of the students, and they can just go, and vote somewhere else. Like, it's not that big of a deal. And it's funny, I was reading this today, and our good friend Amber Ketchum, who happened to go to the same elementary school as me, walked into where I was studying and preparing for this. And she's like, they used to do that at Eastover, which is the Toms River Elementary School that I went to as well. And I was like, I remember vividly, like, being a kid, because, 5th grade was when, at least for me, was when Barack Obama got elected. And I remember election day in the school because we just had like swarms of people coming in. Like, they used to block hallways off so students couldn't walk in certain areas. And I think it was the first time in my life that I've had this moment where I was like, wow, things really have changed. Because one of the issues that came up during the school board meeting, a parent said, I have to show an ID. I have to scan my ID, like, just to get into the school to see my child. Why should we allow polling to happen in schools anymore when it's so hard to get in there anyway? Do we just want random people, with lax security measures to come in? And I just thought about how jarring of a difference it was, because to me, it was like, look at all those adults, like, they're here to vote for the important guy, like, it's just crazy. But I'm curious what your take on all of this is.
Well, that made me chuckle. Like, I have to show my ID to just see my own kid at the school, right? When you don't even have to show your ID to vote, which is kind of ridiculous. But so that just made me chuckle, because first of all, you should have to show your ID to vote also. So, but maybe that's a different.
I don't think that's a hot take.
Well, it depends on who you talk to. Anyway, so I think, though, there's a very easy solution to this, and I'm not the first one to float this idea out there into the ether, but I think it's quite simple. You just make general election day a federal holiday, and you make the primary election days statewide holidays, and you close the schools those days. People have been trying to get rid of Columbus Day as a holiday for years now. Okay, fine. So just instead of having that day off, you have that November day off, that first Tuesday in November for election day. Boom, done. Then the school's closed as it is. It's just a normal day off for the students, like they would have had in October. Now they have it in November. Bada bing, bada boom. Schools doesn't have anything to worry about. Done. And then the other one is primary election day. You do the same thing. I'm sure there's another holiday in there that people have been trying to get rid of, or maybe they don't. Maybe since they have that November day off, if Veterans Day is off, you give them off. You go back to school on Veterans Day, and then you have this other election day off. And maybe that Veterans Day, to honor the veterans, instead of having a day off from school, history classes, and for the younger students, throughout the day, you learn things about veterans and history. Maybe have speaker come in and like the veterans group VAs come into the schools and they do an assembly or something to honor the veterans. That's not a full day off, but it's something that you do to honor the veterans. And then look, you're done, and you don't have this problem. You don't have this thing to worry about. I think the biggest point of contention as to why you would take why taking these voting locations out of the schools is that they've been in the schools forever. Like you were talking about, you're talking about the election 2008. So they've been in schools for decades at this point. People are used to it. People that have lived in these areas know what their voting location is. And if you change that from one election to another, you're going to see issues in the voting. People aren't going to know where to go because they've been going to the school forever. They don't check anymore. Maybe they're not completely tuned into the news of these changing polling places. So I think you're going to hurt voter turnout if you move these election locations. So I think the best solution is to give federal holidays, make a federal holiday for election day and a statewide holiday for primary elections. I think you'll increase voter turnout as a whole, and you will avoid these problems. And it's just a day off as opposed to a virtual learning day. You just replace that day off with another one that, and I don't think it's that big of a deal. I don't think the first Tuesday in November getting off instead of the first, Monday in October is that big of a deal. Truly.
I agree with you. And it was like when you said that, about, a half an hour ago, I was like, that's so clearly the obvious and easy solution to this problem, which is exactly why nobody wants to do it. Because it's obvious and easy.
Why can't I'm pretty sure schools can decide like their own calendar. I don't see why Toms River School District just doesn't do that. If their problem is like we're the only district that really has this problem, then it's like, okay, then you just give the students off those days and you switch their off days with other holidays.
So I believe we have a 9-person board. I think there was 6 people on the board that didn't really see an issue with the virtual learning days and like basically kind of just shoved this through and didn't even want to hear these other positions being made. Which again is another problem, and we say this every time. Like, it's always funny that it's like elected bodies that are making the rules, and ultimately the decisions that affect voter turnout, voter efficacy, and voter information, access to polls, all these other things. So maybe there's a particular interest as to why these people want to keep voter turnout the way that it is, and who can really say? I agree with you though. There's no excuse, for this debacle. I think it should be pretty easy internal negotiation. Maybe you should just show up and be like, hey, listen, guys, I have the solution. I'll do your jobs for you. Create this day as a holiday in the calendar. Bing, bang, boom. Do what you're going to do.
Right, because I'm pretty sure schools can decide that type of thing.
They can,
right?
Like, they can. They vote on the calendar. That's what this is all arising.
So it just doesn't seem. It just seems like an issue to me, or it doesn't seem like an issue to me, because you can simply avoid this by building it into your calendar. And maybe there's a reason why voter turnout isn't great, because people don't want to walk into a school during the school day and disrupt the schooling. It's like, why? So I'll just go later, but then the polls do close at a certain time, so you miss that. I don't know. It, like with most things, it seems like easy solutions are never the solutions that are given, and it's kind of mind-boggling and troubling. But it is what it is at this point. But Steve, look, as we wrap up here and we head to the new year, let's talk a little bit about New Year's resolutions. What's looking at 2024? What are some things that you, Stephen Rimbolo, maybe want to see for yourself, and maybe what are some things that you hope other people can take into 2024 and maybe use to better themselves?
This is a brilliant question. So I normally put a lot of thought, and I really try to meticulously plan some big goals for myself, and I haven't gotten to that point yet. I need to, in the next 2 days, kind of really lock down, think about. It did. It came out of nowhere. But there's some things that always remain the same. And I think those are worth talking about. And for me, at this stage of life, like you're 25 right now, everybody says it's like quarter life crisis, and maybe I've been living in that a little too much. But for me, I think the things that I really want to focus on as I move into this new year, most importantly, is just being like the best version of Stephen that I can be. I want to lean into the things that bring me happiness, bring me joy, and really do my best to excel and allow more of that positivity into my life at my own creation. You know what I mean? I want to make more happy circumstances for myself. I want to continue to work hard and progress towards, my professional goals in law school. And, the big move there is obviously transferring out, coming back up here, getting into Rutgers Law, and just taking that place by storm and, chasing my dreams up here. With regard to, bodybuilding and the gym is a very big part of my life. I'd like to do another competition, a bodybuilding competition next year. That's something that I'm really going to put a lot of, preparation, energy, and effort into. But to wrap it, I would just say exactly what I said in the beginning: is just being the best version of me, unapologetically, and just staying true to myself and asking myself the hard questions, trying to learn about myself and pushing growth in all aspects of life, financially, academically, professionally, personally, mentally, all of those things. I just seek growth and positivity in the new year. And that's something that I hope that everybody can, in their own way, find, nurture, and spread unto others and be a beacon. And, when you have those things that work for you and it resonates with other people, share it. Share it like feverishly, like you want everybody to catch the positivity bug, because I think as we move through life, as I'm getting older and I'm accepting and understanding challenges in front of me, it takes a village. And who you surround yourself with on the journey of life, I think really makes a difference on your path. And if I can put out positivity, if I can exude, strength and confidence, and I can attract those other things, I think that I have, the ability to build a really powerful community, a powerful village where we all support each other, we all want the best for each other, and we all just kind of climb together. So that's what I want. I want to cultivate more of that, not only within myself but within the people around me.
Nice. I think that a lot of what you said is very good, and it's very universal. I think that's the best way to put it, right? You want to be, like you said, you want to be the best Steven that you could possibly be. But I think that is still a universal goal. Like that's something that everybody should be working towards. Not being the best Steven they can be, but being the best whomever they are they can be.
Yes.
I think there's now personally myself, when it comes to New Year's resolutions, I like doing like making very practical things part of my New Year's resolution. So one thing that I want to do this year more is journaling. I got so Ryan Holiday, he does the Daily Stoic podcast, and he has a book called The Daily Stoic, and then he has another book called it's like the Daily Stoic Journal. And basically it asks you a question a day and you write an answer to it, and it gives you a couple of lines to write out a short answer to each question every day. So I think that I got that for Christmas along with the regular Daily Stoic book. So I think my goal for 2024 is to very practically, I want to create a routine for myself in the morning. I have a very practical New Year's resolution, and I think that is to create morning routine for myself, right? Where I sit down with a cup of coffee, I answer my journal question, I read my first, my Daily Stoic piece of wisdom for the day. Maybe I read something else, and like that's how I start every morning. I think that's another goal of mine is to not be on the phone right away in the morning. Sort of use the phone as my alarm clock, sure, have it wake me up, but then go downstairs, make myself a cup of coffee, do my reading, and then go back to the phone after really having appreciated and woken up in the morning. And if that means I have to wake up a little bit earlier than I've been doing, then I'm gonna have to make myself do that, right? So Stephen, I appreciate your New Year's resolutions to be these big pictures things. For a person like myself, I want to make it a little bit more like actually like forcing myself to do something.
Yes.
like, a little bit more practical of like these are the steps you have to take. So whether your New Year's resolution is something more of a big picture idea or something more of like I want to start going to the gym, I want to start, you know, journaling, I want to start reading more, whatever the case may be. What's important to note is that as long as it's trying to make yourself a little bit better every day and doing something that will make you a little bit better every single day is what matters the most here. Um, and if you're more of a practical person, or if you're more of a conceptual person, find something that is going to work for you. It's important to know yourself, I think, Steve, when you're making these New Year's resolutions. I think what's also important is to not like put too much pressure on yourself where it's something that you're going to completely change your lifestyle, right? Like, for example, your resolutions aren't trying to really change anything about your lifestyle. They're either working to improve things you already do and love, or looking to just like better connect with yourself and the people around you. That's not inherently changing anything. But you look back and maybe 300 and what 66 days this year. I'm pretty sure it's a leap year.
It is.
And you're gonna see a market improvement and difference. Something like my New Year's resolution, again, it's not something crazy. I'm not making some sort of radical change. I'm writing a little bit every day and reading a little bit, maybe waking up a little bit earlier, right? Like that's not going to completely make this drastic change in my day to day. But you look back in 366 days, and all of a sudden, things are hopefully better and changed markedly.
And you know what that is? And this is a phrase I use all the time. I'm fairly certain I stole it from the guy that taught me macroeconomics my sophomore year of college, way back when. And he talked about the marginal aggregation of gains. And that is like very obviously like an investment, economic brokerage, like you want to build a portfolio. It's all about those small incremental things over decades that lead to these huge profits. And I think that is also true in everything that you just said. And it's exactly what you're describing. And, it might not seem like it, but 5 minutes in the morning every day where you're thinking and you're writing, you're putting thoughts onto paper, you're learning to express in different ways and new ways, and you're refining a tool that like for the profession you and I are going into is quite important, is the ability to write and write thoughtfully. You do that every day for 366 days, your writing is going to change completely. It's the marginal, that 5 minutes every day over 366 days. You look at what an investment in yourself and a new skill, in a new way of appreciating life, thinking deeply. And I think that's the real insight to have and move forward with all these things, like you're saying about, starting the new year, coming up with a resolution, and move slow. Overnight success is never overnight. There's like 10 years worth of long nights before the night you wake up, a success the next morning. And just understanding that, you can't be hard on yourself. You shouldn't set these, like insanely like ridiculous. I'm going to wake up and I'm going to, on January 1st, I'm going to eat 6 meals a day. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to read 10 pages of a book. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do like, there is such a thing as too much. And I think the balance is in the simplicity and really nurturing those things that you think at the end of the 366 days, you can look back on and say, I'm glad I did that. I'm better in this way. I learned this, let's do it again. Let's pick another thing. Let's lean into it. And that's just over a lifetime, man, you create something beautiful.
Yeah, no, absolutely true. I think just a small little token of that. I'm pretty sure I doubled the books I read from 2022 to 2023.
Nice.
I think that, which was one of my resolutions last year. I wanted to read more, and I think I have to double check, but I'm pretty sure I got double, if not a little bit more than double, the books from year over year. And it's not doing something crazy, right? It's just sort of marginally in doing a marginal increase day to day. And I think that's a great way. That's a great way to look at it, and that's a great way to look at the new year as you're going into it. Like don't try and change yourself or change your life overnight from December 31st to January 1st, right? Try and change your life from December 31st to December 31st, right? And you have 366 days to make 366 steps, if not more.
That's it. And not for nothing. You highlighted the fact that this is a leap year. You get an extra day this year, so
Oh,
like,
true.
don't slip. You get an extra chance. It only comes around every 4 years. Got to take advantage of it.
That's right. And the last leap year, Steve, if you remember, we kind of got screwed over. So
We
really got to make this one.
we did. Now this is going to be a that was a COVID year,
That
which is
was the COVID year.
crazy to think about. But I will say before we conclude, I would love to invite listener, family, anybody who comes across this, like, share with us what it is you're looking forward to, what your goals are, what your resolutions are in the new year. And I think that we have an opportunity now to cultivate a community where, listen, drop a comment on the TikTok, drop a comment on the Instagram, write us on the YouTube. And, maybe in 3 months, you might catch an episode and it'll be like, hey, Jenny from, Ohio, are you still doing the, 5 days of journaling or 5 minutes of journaling every day you said you would do? So I think that we have an opportunity to sort of create accountability and move through this together as a community. Community starts here with us.
That's right. And I think that's a great thing to sort of leave off this New Year's conversation with. It's tell people that will hold you accountable what your New Year's resolution is. Don't be afraid to tell people what it is, and talk to people that will hold you accountable for it. Make sure that you're doing what you're doing. If you mean what you say and you really want to make a change, I think one of the most important things is to have people around you that will hold you accountable for that change that you want to make. So the people that you're closest with, the people that you care about and are going to hold your feet to the fire, so to speak, share those resolutions with those people. And if you don't have those people in your life, get those people in your life, because those are the people that are going to make your life better. Even though they might be hard on you, even though there's going to be times where you look at them and you're going to be mad because they're holding you to what you said you would do, those are the most important people in your life, for sure.
They are.
But look, Steve, I hope everybody has a happy new year. I hope you have a happy new year. And I think with that, we're going to wrap up the last episode of 2023. Here's to 2024. I hope Jersey has a great 2024. I hope our country has a great 2024. And most importantly, I hope all of you listening have a great 2024. Thank you for listening for another year. And for Jersey First TV, this has been Bridging the Gap. I'm AJ Malillo.
I'm Stephen Rambolo.
Have a good one, everybody. We'll talk to you next year.